Good evening. This evening we are honored to have with us County Executive Barry Glassman, who will deliver his 4th annual State of the County address. He will be speaking to those of us here in the audience in the council chambers and to the public, thanks to live streaming on the county website by Harford Cable Network. Video of the address will also be achieved on the county website as part of the council legislative session. Before we hear from County Executive, we have a brief video from the Glassman administration with highlights from the 3rd year in office, and anytime you're ready. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce a special guest who will introduce the County Executive. Gavin Donnelly, please come forward to the podium to our left.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's State of the County Address. For those of you who may not know me, my name is Gavin Donnelly, a 3rd grader at Ring Factory Elementary School. My love for local government began this year during my first social studies unit and has continued ever since. I decided to write a letter to our county executive so I could learn more about him and what he did. Not only did he write me back, but invited me to his office. I was so excited that I called his secretary to set up time that we could meet. I probably should have run it by my parents first. It was no surprise to me that Mr. Glassman was even better in person than on paper. He taught me a lot that day about what our local government does to make our lives better. Mr. Glassman was so nice to me that I decided to invite him to my school's talent show, where I would be performing a special dance routine. My parents told me he might be too busy not to get my hopes up. But when I showed up at my school that next week, guess who was there? You guessed it, our very busy county executive. He cares about me, he cares about our community. I learned so much about what Barry Glassman's office does for our county. Now it's your turn to hear. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce to you the man of the hour, Barry Glassman.
Wow, that's going to be a tough act to follow, right? Gavin did a great job, and he even has the company colors on, the blue and green tonight. It's good to see that. And Gavin, we both need the same stool, so we know what my staff we didn't even have to move too much stage equipment around. Thank you, Gavin. As the council president said, Gavin's a 3rd grader at Ring Factory Elementary School, and he has an affinity for public service, and what a great interest that he had. Janie was so surprised that day he called and just said, I need to set up some times to see the county executive. I won't tell the lobbyists that he got in quicker than they do here in the county, but he is a perfect example of why we work so hard for Harper County's future generations. Council President Slutsky, Gavin and I thank you for letting us take a little break from tradition. It is a fitting tribute to you as well, as you leave us a distinguished career in education and public service. I thank you for your service to generations of veterans, students, and Harford County citizens whom you have touched in 55 years of service. Now, I will try and make your final year as president as smooth and uneventful as possible. Debbie and I wish you and Linda many years of rest and relaxation. Council members, special guests, and my fellow Harford County citizens, tonight is my last State of the County address of this term. Debbie is home watching the farm tonight, so she is feeding the sheep for me, which she's not ever happy about anymore. My son Jordan is here helping out, and he got engaged over the Christmas holiday, and we're certainly glad to have him with us this evening. So I don't keep you too long here tonight. I did want to point out that my staff has done a great job, not only with the video. If you get a chance, look at about a 4-page list of accomplishments, just the 2017 progress report, and indeed our 3-year results. It's some great information there, and I'd probably have to go to about 11 o'clock tonight to give all that information to you. Our new path forward of fiscal responsibility and balance, efficiency through customer service, and innovation with accountability has led us back to higher ground. Now, for you Star Wars fans, and since it was the holiday's biggest hit, you'll recognize that line from the Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, where Obi-Wan Kenobi said, I have the high ground. That's before somebody got killed, but that's a good line. The difficult decisions I made when coming into office have helped us get back uphill. I've heard that sometimes you have to walk through a little mud in your path before you make it up to higher ground. Indeed, the county's fiscal position continues to improve. In many areas not seen before the Great Recession, revenues continue to increase at modest levels. I continue to stress our expenditures both during the budget process and throughout the year. It sort of reminds me of an old farmer saying that I share with some of our high school graduates. When you find yourself in a hole, the first thing you got to do is stop digging. Our fund balance, after nearly being depleted when I came into office, has been restored. These were points made to the credit rating agencies last week, and I'm confident when Harper County receives our ratings next week that we will maintain our AAA bond rating, something that only 3% of counties nationwide can claim. For the third straight year, our revenue growth outpaced expenditures. Last year's revenues were up 2.3%, while our expenditures grew by only 1.5%, and that's because we have lived below our means. Our available surplus has more than doubled in the last 3 years. With so much uncertainty in the world today, it is imperative that we continue to work on adequate reserves. Another positive sign is the growth in the number and value of residential and commercial properties in Harper County. Through economic development and recovering assessments, we are up 8% since bottoming out in 2014. I can remember on my election night party up the street, a local leader telling me, good luck. The county was just about broke, and I would be the first county executive to have to raise the property tax since 1984. I am proud to say that this turnaround has been done without touching the tax rate. In fact, we have adopted the first 20% credit for eligible property owners who are 65 and older and have lived in their home for more than 40 years or have retired from the military. We estimate this new credit could benefit more than 3,500 senior-led households with an average benefit of $550. I also plan to keep the local income tax frozen. Not as cold as the last couple of weeks, but I plan to keep it frozen. I have my treasurer and the budget directly closely monitoring the economy, and in particular how the changes at the federal level could be felt locally. On the expenditure side, I promised 3 years ago to restore pay increases for our teachers, our deputies, correctional officers, and my own dedicated county employees. And in fact, I have directed $24 million, nearly all the county's increased spending, to education and public safety. Our fiscally responsible and realistic capital improvement plan is funding our key infrastructure and renewal projects. Now, it's not real fancy. It covers roadways and roofs, but we also have resources and state approvals in place to meet our stormwater obligations. And like others, we have done all this without any increases in taxes. And finally, we will break ground in a few months for the new Havre de Grace Middle High School in Havre de Grace, hopefully to be opened by the 40th anniversary of the Warrior Class of 1980, which is mine. So we should hopefully make that in 2 years. I thank the Board of Ed for their work, and we hope to break ground here in a month or so. Gavin, I know you only saw pictures of President Lincoln and Reagan in my office, but one of my favorite quotes from President Lyndon Johnson follows my theme tonight. We can stand on no higher ground than the school ground. And in my role as second vice president of the Maryland Association of Counties, I will push for state funding formula revisions that have far too long shortchanged Maryland suburban counties like Harford County. For the past 3 years, we have increased funding by $15 million, where the state has only contributed $1 million more in operating funds. At the same time, the state is increasing duties on our teachers and administrators. I will also continue to push for return of our fair share of revenue from the state gas tax, meant to maintain our local roads. We have been funding this ourselves at the tune of $23 million to keep our roads safe and our local contractors working. But the greatest threat to local government is the same one that faces all our families, the uncontrolled costs of health care and prescriptions. It continues to outpace and threaten future wages and benefits of our employees and our partnering agencies. We will work closely with our national partners in Washington to try to force a solution, because it is critical for the future of all Maryland's counties. Locally, on the heels of completing Harford Next and last year's comprehensive rezoning, I will be signing an agreement shortly with the University of Maryland's National Center for Smart Growth. This partnership of research and education has been used in Howard and Anne Arundel counties and will assist our departments with multiple innovative projects, including the development of our new Churchville-Cresswell study area. As I announced last year, I have implemented the first ever County Medical Director and EMS Standards Board. They are laying the groundwork to launch the county's first owned ambulances and strengthen and support our volunteer and foundation units. The first group of county paramedics will begin training next Tuesday. I would like any members of the EMS board to stand, please, right now. They've done a lot of hard work to get us here tonight. I'd also like to thank Director Hopkins, John Richter, Tammy Higgins, Warren Patrick, Mike Brunicky, and Deputy Chief Rick Ayers and Dr. Tim Chismar for their tireless efforts to get our units built and staffed this year. If you could stand up, please. Thank you. I am so proud of our emergency services and their internationally accredited dispatch center. And I plan to continue our record financial commitment to our local volunteer fire companies with the second installment of $350,000 to the Whiteford Volunteer Fire Company and another $540,000 to the busy Joppa Magnolia Volunteer Fire Company for their Hanson Road substation. This brings the county's total to $1.2 million for that Joppa project. Thank you. We have implemented 12 new apps, those are phone apps, and modernized permitting for our citizens. It's not flashy, but we have modernized our budgeting and county employee training with performance management placed across all county departments. Smarter procurement methods have saved the county $5.7 million in just 3 years. And this is the foundation of our financial success I talked about earlier. Now let me take a little bit of a break. I want to assure you that it will not be all work this year. All right, guys? We will be the home to the National Bassmaster Elite Tournament for the fishers on the council. And one of my favorite things is running. I'm excited that the Al Sesky Scholarship Fund and other partners will be bringing a half marathon back to Harford County, and we'll be running across the Susquehanna River in September. I do owe a special gratitude to Governor Hogan, Kevin Reichert with the Maryland Transportation Authority for their cooperating to let us use the Hayden Bridge to run across the Susquehanna River. You would not believe how complicated that was. Now, don't worry, guys. I know some of you may not be up to a half marathon, but the organizers tell me that they will need volunteers at the water stations. All right? And let me just go off script just real quick. One thing, there are some local leaders, and I heard this last week, that have become nervous about these large events that we do have in the county. And believe me, being from Darlington, I know the first Saturday in October, Main Street looks like the mall in Washington. I mean, it's flooded. And I know there's concern, and everyone, sometimes there is going to be some inconvenience when we bring folks in. But listen, they spend money, they stay in our hotel rooms, and over the last 3 years, just for example, Visit Harford has received $1.6 million to market for all our communities across the county. Aberdeen has received $1.7 million in just their share of the lodging fee. And Havre de Grace has received close to $900,000 for their museums and tourist attractions. So my pitch is that this helps us all. It lifts all our boats, and that we should stay open-minded and make sure that we become active in the tourist industry, and we can do it by working together. Now, I know Cindy Mummy gets worried when I go off script, but that's been chewing at me for a couple of days, so I figure I'd say it tonight. Listen, most of you know that of all the successes, my work with our youth and families and those at risk give me the most reward. It has given me the confidence to try and beat back the opioid epidemic, homelessness, and those who have not found the economic recovery and need navigation for health care and mental illness. You see, if you want to lift somebody up, you got to be on high ground. Our community service folks have won national awards for their opiate treatment programs, which have reached 12 million impressions. And I know the sheriff was here tonight. I saw him earlier. What a great partner he has been in this battle. And we are in a battle, and it's going to be a long haul. I'm also proud of our Project Homeless Connect with the United Way Youth and Family Resource Fair that brought 1,000 families to Harford community. The Housing Fair brought 200 first-time home buyers. We've collected hundreds of coats, socks, shaving supplies, for our veterans, children's, and folks of all ages. The I Can Bike Camp for citizens with disabilities. If you can only remember back to your first ride on a bike, this gives young people with disabilities the chance to do the same thing. I see my friend Tom Walls in the back, and tonight I'm glad to announce that I am going to build on this work by announcing our partnership with Harford's Miracle League to provide land at our Shucks Road location for a custom-designed field for youth with disabilities to play baseball, because every child should get a chance to ride a bike, and every child should get a chance to play ball. Tom, if you'd stand up. It also brings me great pleasure to announce tonight that next year, Harford County will also move forward with its first 24-hour crisis center for those in their ultimate moment of need. Together with the University of Maryland Upper Chesapeake Health, the Harford County Health Department, and Healthy Harford, I will submit a $250,000 funding request in the upcoming budget, in addition to the $250,000 we already dedicate to treatment locally. And we have leveraged that, and Amber Schroeds, my director, has done a wonderful job. We have leveraged that $250,000 into $1.3 million for folks that need treatment, because recovery is possible. And to recoup that financial cost of the sheriff, my departments, I will be directing the county law department to prepare an RFP, as we will be joining other Maryland counties in suing the opioid manufacturers and distributors. Now, if you've seen me on the graduation circuit, I also love this quote from Maya Angelou. I've learned that people will forget what you said, they will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And I'm going to share with you a note from a Miss Jones, who contacted me when she and her twin 2-year-old boys found themselves homeless. It sums up and answers the question I get a good bit: why stick with the most challenging office I've ever held? She writes, I wanted to take time to thank you. I reached out to you about getting housing. I was successful at doing so and have been in my new home now for 30 days. I know that sometimes you may question if you are making a difference, and is it worth all the daily stress? I just wanted you to know that you did help my family. To us, you are our hero, our modern-day Superman. But you see, I'm not the Superman. The real hero here is Lenora Robinson, sort of my Lois Lane. County employees like her are making a difference every day. Miss Jones goes on to say that when you lose everything and you fall flat on your face, you pray for people who will not judge you. She encouraged me to just try, and for that I am so grateful. Lenora, could you stand and let me recognize you? And thank you to my cabinet, my staff, and county employees who've made the past 3 years such a success and carried my message forward. And here we go, Gavin. As President Lincoln said, I simply tried to do what seemed to do what's best each day as each day came. So just like day one and year 4, I will work hard every day for the county I love, for the next generation of Gavins, for the Jones family, those struggling to survive, and for each of us to reach the blessings and prosperity found on higher ground. God bless you, and God bless Harford County. Thank you.
County Executive Glassman, good evening. I'm Captain Jim, Vice President of the Harford County Council. Some say that all good things come to an end. Political eras come and they go. Some are remembered and some are not. Since the creation of charter government here in Harford County, I have been able to be a part of this body either as a reporter or as the voter's choice to fill the seat in District C. Quite an honor, and I am always humbled. During my tenure, I have had the pleasure of serving this body as Vice President, another honor accorded me by my peers. But tonight, Council President Slutsky will deliver his final address. The citizens of Harford County have indeed been well served, with a Council President deeply dedicated to the position in which the people endowed their trust. The depth to which President Slutsky studied each issue was above that was expected. His leadership on educational issues is unprecedented. His skills of building consensus among members of this body was uncanny. He has dealt in facts because his historical knowledge of council matters and his research skills placed him on higher ground. And yet, when he was found to be factually correct and others had to say, we were wrong, he never boasted. President Slutsky, our coach, will be missed. Yet we know that others will come along to fill that void. My hope is that they will not forget him, but will seek his counsel as a private citizen, because he still has great wisdom to share. It is my honor to introduce the president of this council, a fellow veteran, a Marine, and my friend, President Coach Slutsky.
Mr. Glassman, as a former athlete, Marine, and coach, every time I get the urge to run, I lie down till it goes away. Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone had a happy holiday break and is enjoying a pleasant new year. For the last 3 years, it's been a challenge for me to come up with a topic to speak to you about after the county executive Glassman presents his State of the County message. This year I've decided to do a two-part address. The first part will engage in what I consider to be some negative situations, and the second part will end on a positive note. When I started to run for my first campaign some 15 years ago, I spoke to many different individuals and groups about running for office. The first thing I said was, the good news is what you see is what you get. And the bad news is what you see is what you get. I had no hidden agenda then, and I have none now. To quote Francisco Goya, the famous Spanish artist and commentator of his era, the dream of reason breeds monsters. We are now witnessing a serious national and international anger and division over opposing ideologies. And I believe it's fair to say that there are more than 3 or 4 ideologies involved. The historian Thomas Powers tells us, it's my working theory that pinning down what happened is always the first step to understanding why it happened. For different reasons, we have created different monsters. First, let's look at where we are presently in the United States of America. We are a nation of nearly 350 million people, the 3rd largest nation in the world. divided in several ways. We have those who identify as the far right-wing conservative, Republicans with names like Libertarians or Tea Party. We have the center-right Republicans, referred to often as moderates. On the other end, we have the far left-wing believers, often referred to academically as egalitarian socialists, and in the most extreme form, communists. Somewhere in the middle, we have those center-left liberals, now identified as progressives. However, I believe the most immediate and profound existential threat to our safety and security as American citizens, to our economic and financial sustainability, to our national geopolitical influence, are the anarchist groups, embodied by Antifa, a self-styled anti-fascist group on one end of the spectrum, and the neo-Nazi organizations on the other end. We have millions of dollars being spent by idealists all of the time. George Soros on one side of the spectrum and the Koch brothers on the other side. In other parts of the world, we have dictators, despots, warlords, and pretenders. Just look at Iran, North Korea, Russia, most of the African continent, as well as Venezuela, and several Central and South American nations. There is nothing new about the divisive, convoluted, and disputed arguments that are currently going on in the United States and these other parts of the world, with one huge exception, and that is modern communications. In this modern era, we have instant communications, 24 hours a day of television news with different stations representing different ideologies and belief conditions. We have daily newspapers that come to our doorsteps or that we can find on our electronic devices. Politics is the main target of the news world. As long as we have been the United States of America, we have had controversy over politics. Who has been a good president or a bad one? When you look at the rankings, there are significant differences depending on what organization with its own ideology is doing the ranking. Was the worst president Herbert Hoover, or Ulysses S. Grant, or maybe Franklin Pierce, or Richard Nixon? Some might pick Andrew Jackson or Warren Harding. The biggest problem right now for me is what I call a crisis of confidence in communications. I don't believe that I had ever heard the term fake news before 2016. In that election cycle, it became a term. So what has happened with news reporting, and why did it happen? I believe that what happened is there is now so much competition for news that news organizations, whether they be radio or television, newspapers or journals, have become willing to do almost anything to sell their news and keep their ratings up. The results are shabby and or fake news. There seems to be a dearth of research that is necessary to accurately write a story. Let me provide a couple poignant examples. Just a few weeks back, many TV stations, radio programs, and newspapers were reminding us of the tragedy at Sandy Hook Elementary shooting 5 years ago. We were all reminded that this was the worst mass school shooting in modern history. I guess that depends on what modern history is defined as. I just don't think they did real research. It just wasn't done. As horrific and deplorable as the Sandy Hook school shooting was, it is not the worst mass shooting in modern history. The worst mass shooting was at the Bath School in Bath, Michigan in 1927, when 47 students and teachers were killed and 58 wounded. The attack was carried out by the former Board of Education member who did not get reelected and went crazy with revenge. Let's look at just one other piece of commonly published information regarding firearm possessions in the United States. The media often informs us that Americans have more guns per capita than any other nation in the world. And that seems to lead us to the idea that we have more gun crime. Actually, Switzerland has more guns per capita than any other nation in the world. Switzerland has a militia military system, and all healthy citizens of military age are trained for the military reserve service. All homes in Switzerland with a healthy reservist have possession of military weapons. The type of weapon depends on the strategic position of the home. And Switzerland has one of the lowest gun crime rates in the world. There seems to me to be little social grace in sensitive conversations anymore. Commentators, talk show hosts, and average citizens don't seem to be able to hold a serious conversation without either talking over one another or calling names or speaking louder as if more people will listen to their message. We need a common effort to get back to polite conversation. Those who know me well know that for the last 45 years, the greatest part of my adult life, I've been studying American Indian history, culture, archaeology, and anthropology. And I think there's an appropriate Indian saying that may represent what I'm talking about. I brought that saying to Council Member Vincenti, and he told me, no one's going to believe you if you don't say it in Indian language. And I told him I can do that. So here we go in Lakota Sioux, a language I speak a little of. Oyate tona, nanji wazu, opeya, wanji manje, na wohaya, opeya numpa seji yelo. Translated into English, that says, some people listen with one ear and speak with two tongues. We will not come together as a nation until we listen better and speak softly with respect. Unless we all start to work together for the common good, there won't be any. The historian Jared Diamond, best known for his books Guns, Germs, and Steel, has done extensive research on the conditions that affect successful nation building. He offers the top 7 conditions. Think of them as we go through them. Effective rule of law, number 1. Number 2, enforcement of contracts. Number 3, protection of property rights. Lack of corruption. Low frequency of assassination. Openness to trade and flow of capital. And 7, incentive for investments. When we are able to digest these conditions, we can predict the fate of our nation and others. And now I'd like to move on to the positive side. Some comments about this council and my council colleagues. It's been a pleasure for me to work with the present council. The 7 council members bring a wide variety of background and experience to the council. We have an accountant, an emergency services expert, a former radio personality, and prior policeman and military experience. We have a real estate agent and a businessman and with former planning experience. Another small businessman, an artist, a financial consultant, and a teacher coach. Council member Mike Perrone, one of the younger generation, is a careful researcher who does his homework. He is passionate and presents his positions well. He is always professional and works with his colleagues on the council. Mr. Perrone serves on the Audit Advisory Board and other boards where his skills are much appreciated. Thank you, Mr. Perrone. Councilmember Joe Woods, also towards the younger generation, who has been a longtime member of the council. He has had many years in the fire and EMS service. Mr. Woods has created and developed a variety of businesses, all of which have been successful. He is soft-spoken, astute, and is well respected in his district and across the county. Mr. Woods not only has local and state reputation for his EMS experience, but also enjoys national recognition. Thank you so much, Mr. Woods. Captain Member Jim McMahon, often called Captain Jim, and by most that know him, he has built a very successful radio station business after serving some years as a Bel Air police officer and in the United States Army and the Maryland State Guard. Before joining the council, Captain Jim was a town commissioner for Bel Air, and for the last 3 years, he has served as the council vice president and been my right-hand assistant. And I thank Captain Jim for all of his support and how he's helped me as I move along this process. Thank you, Captain Jim. Councilmember Chad Schroeds, still one of the youthful members of the council. Mr. Schroeds represents the northern and more agricultural parts of the county. He probably travels more miles serving his district than any other council member considering its size. Mr. Schroeds also has years of prior experience in the area of planning and zoning, and he assists his colleagues in this area of expertise on many occasions. He is always willing to work with his colleagues and his constituents to bring forward the best legislation he can to meet the needs of his district and the county as a whole. Councilman Patrick Vincenti tried to get me to speak and sue again. One of the more seasoned council members is a small business owner and an internationally renowned artist. Mr. Vincenti has directed local foundations, including the Decoy Museum in Havre de Grace. Mr. Vincenti knows only one way of doing things, and that is the right way. If someone wants to work with Mr. Vincenti, you can call him, text him, write a letter, go on Facebook, or show up at his doorstep. And if he thinks it's necessary, he will be on your doorstep. Whatever he does it all the way with honor and dignity. Thank you, Mr. Vincenti. Mr. Curtis Beulah, a United States Army veteran who came from humble circumstances, and after his military experience, built a very successful financial services business. He brings his business knowledge to the council and works with his colleagues with a positive and friendly demeanor. Like other council members, Mr. Beulah attends meetings and events whenever he thinks he can assist the citizens of the county. Thank you, Mr. Beulah, for your service. And now I'll try to move towards a conclusion. I might begin that by asking us if any native citizens of the state of Missouri in the audience here. Seeing none. As a native of Missouri, I know the importance of mules and their stubborn nature. And if you want me to believe something, you'll have to show me. Quoting a very old newspaper article I found in my father's scrapbook, which said, I received a newspaper article containing the remarks of another who condemns all that his rival praises and praises all that his rival condemns. And there I am, left as an ass between two locks of hay. You have to know about mules. So that I have determined to relinquish my animate nature and remain stationary as a lock of hay between two asses. It is important for me and for many to remember that emotion is the enemy of rational argument. And as emotions go, fear is the more potent than the rest. As a nation, we need to overcome our fears and find the courage to do the right things together. Thank you for sharing your evening with me. Good night. All right, I think we can sit down. Anything else? Put the microphone on. Is there anything else that the county executive would like to add to the entertainment this evening? None? And if anyone wants lessons in how to speak Lakota, let me know. So I think what we'll do is take a very short recess, and then we'll move on with the scheduled council session. So let's take a few minutes in recess. Thank you. Good evening. The chair calls to order legislative session day 18-002. And with all of the luck of the world, I not only had the address, but I have the Pledge of Allegiance and the opening prayer. So if you would stand with me this evening. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Heavenly Father, we seek your help with our affairs today. Bless this evening with your divine intelligence and help us to make the best use we can of our own. We have diverse opinions here, yet we wish to mend our differences and reach agreements satisfactory to all. Please share a little of your wisdom with us to help us do the right thing for all concerned. Thank you for your heavenly assistance today. Amen. The first item we have on the agenda tonight is a presentation of proclamations, and I would like to invite up Mrs. Nelia Lancelati. Am I saying that close to right? Okay. And if you have others with you, who would you like to invite? Just by yourself? Okay, come on up and I'll meet you. And as we do that, Mr. McMahon will read the proclamation.
Proclamation, Harford County, Maryland. Whereas 7.5 million people in the United States will experience stalking in their lifetime, and whereas SARC provided life-saving resources to 1,994 people last year, its 28-bed shelter provided 9,472 bed nights to 126 individuals. SARC's legal staff was successful in obtaining protective orders 97% of the time, and 1,276 free counseling sessions were provided. And whereas when an individual is stalked, it can have long-term damaging effects on the victim that also leaves a mark on the family, the friends, and the community at large. Whereas stalking is not confined to any group of people, but crosses all economic, racial, gender, educational, religious, and societal barriers, and is sustained by societal indifference. And whereas stalking is a crime that violates an individual's privacy, safety, dignity, security, and humanity, due to the prevalence of anxiety, insomnia, social dysfunction, and severe depression experienced by most victims. Victims should have help to find the safety, compassion, comfort, and healing that they need. And whereas the Harford County government is joining forces with the Sexual Assault Spouse Abuse Resource Center, known as SARC, and concerned citizens throughout Harford County to take a stand against stalking. We encourage those in need of support to call SARC's 24-hour helpline at 410-836-8430, which is free and confidential. And we encourage Harford County residents to take a stand against stalking by wearing a gray ribbon throughout January to recognize Stalking Awareness Month, by asking one's employer or school to host an ARC Healthy Relationship Seminar, and by practicing the characteristics of healthy relationships among one's family and friends. Now, therefore, we, the County Council of Harford County, Maryland, do hereby proclaim Stalking Awareness Month, January 2018, signed by President Slutsky and all the members of the Harford County Council.
Thank you, Mr. McMahon. Mr. McMahon has just read all of the appropriate whereases and therefores, but I would like to present you personally with this recognition and proclamation. And there'll be some photos, I'm sure, and we're going to give you an opportunity to say a few words if you would like.
Thank you very much on behalf of SARC. I'm the development director, and we just appreciate the county and the community supporting us during January and every month. We are a domestic violence, sexual violence, stalking resource center located in Harper County, and all services are free and are confidential. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And tell everyone, appreciate it. Don't go yet. He wants another picture. We'll put this down here. Okay, council colleagues, we have item number 5 before us, consideration of appointments. We have 3 different sets of appointments to make this evening. Mr. McMahon, we have first the executive appointment for the Director, Office of Information and Communication Technology.
Mr. President, I move to approve the following executive appointment: Director, Office of Information and Communication Technology, the new appointment of Nicholas Kuba.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember McMahon, a second by Councilmember Vincenti to approve the appointment of Mr. Nicholas Cooper to the Director to the Office of Information and Communication Technology. Is there any discussion necessary? Seeing none, we'll take a roll call vote.
Mr. President?
Aye.
Mr. Perone?
Aye.
Mr. Wood?
Aye.
Mr. McMahon?
Aye.
Mr. Schroed?
Aye.
Mr. Vincenti?
Aye.
Mr. Beulah?
Aye.
Thank you, council members. Having 7 in the affirmative and 0 in the negative, the appointment of Mr. Nicholas Kuba as the Director of Information and Communication Technology is approved. Is Mr. Kuba in the audience still with us this evening?
Yes.
Oh, he's hiding behind the camera over there. Thank you. Welcome to the county, sir. Second, we have Commission for Women, Mr. McMahon.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to approve the executive's appointment to the Commission for Women, a new appointment of Christy Halford.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember McMahon, a second by Councilmember Beulah to approve the appointment of Christy Halford to the Commission for Women. Is there any discussion? Having no discussion, we'll take a roll call.
Mr. President?
Aye.
Mr. Perone?
Aye.
Mr. Wood?
Aye.
Mr. McMahon?
Aye.
Mr. Schroed?
Aye.
Mr. Vincenti?
Aye.
Mr. Beulah?
Aye.
Thank you. Having 7 in the affirmative and 0 in the negative, the appointment of Christy Halford to the Commission for Women is approved. Is Ms. Halford with us this evening? Oh, she's. Thank you. Thank you so much for your service, ma'am. And we're moving on to item C, Local Management Board. Mr. McMahon.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to approve the executive appointments to the Local Management Board. 2 new appointments, one of Mr. Frank Kellner as the representative from Harford Mutual Insurance, and Dr. Russell Moy as the representative from the Harford County Health Department.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember McMahon, a second by Councilmember Woods to approve the appointment of Mr. Frank Kellner and Dr. Russell Moy to the Local Management Board. Is there any discussion? Having none, we'll take a roll call vote.
Mr. President?
Aye.
Mr. Perone?
Aye.
Mr. Wood?
Aye.
Mr. McMahon?
Aye.
Mr. Schroed?
Aye.
Mr. Vincenti?
Aye.
Mr. Beulah?
Aye.
Thank you, council members. Having 7 in the affirmative and 0 in the negative, the appointment of Mr. Frank Kellner and Dr. Russell Moy to the Local Management Board is approved. Mr. Moy, Dr. Moy has let me know that he will be unable to attend this evening. I don't know if Mr. Kellner is here. Okay. Thank them for me very much when you have the opportunity. Appreciate their service. Special presentations, item number 6, we have none this evening. Council members, you have before you approval of the minutes for the public hearing on January 2nd, 2018, legislative session day 18-001, January 2, 2018. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Having none, there being no corrections, the minutes stand as approved. And we're going to move on to item number 8, introduction and consideration of resolutions. Resolution 018-17, which is Fry Roads Project Sewer Assessment. Mr. Perrone.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to approve Resolution 18-17.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Perrone and a second by Councilmember Vincenti to approve Resolution 018-17, Fry's Road Project Sewer Assessment. Is there any discussion? Mr. McMahon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senior citizens are constantly being criticized for almost every conceivable deficiency in the world, modern or imaginary. However, upon reflection, I would like to point out that it was not the senior citizens who took the melody out of the music, took the pride out of appearance, took the romance out of love, the responsibility out of parenthood, the togetherness out of the family, the learning out of education, the service out of patriotism, the nativity scenes out of our cities, the refinement out of our language, the ambition out of achievement. We certainly are not the ones who invented the internet so that you could bash your dedicated politician anonymously. But that is why tonight that I must be the voice of the senior citizen. As a senior, I, like most, am over 65. Many of them are over 75. Most of them see their doctor almost as much as they see their spouse. Most are finally getting close to their 30-year mortgage. All are on a fixed income with no chance of seeing little extra cash for a vacation or perhaps a new car. And too many are existing on Social Security alone. But we do understand the meaning of patriotism. And we remember those who have fought and died for our country. We don't take a knee. You will see us with tears in our eyes, pride in our hearts, as we stand at attention with our hand over our hearts. So as I speak tonight as a senior citizen, I look to the fact, where would I be if I were a resident of Fry's Road? How can I afford another $1,500 a year for a water and sewer assessment? Or how can I afford as much as $15,000 for a hookup? Or how can I afford a grinder to hook up? I can't. I'm a senior resident of Fry's Road. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. McMahon. Mr. Perrone.
Thank you, Mr. President. Unfortunately, this is one of those situations that is impossible to navigate without placing an undue burden on someone. Generally speaking, if and when a septic system fails and a property owner has to either switch over to a holding tank or install a mound system, and no doubt sees the market value of their property drop as a result, that would be an unfair burden. Unfair in the sense that changes in the local water table because of development that happens elsewhere is not the fault of the property owner. So let's say that, alternatively, hypothetically, a sewer system was built but only paid for by those that wanted it. In that situation, that would place an undue burden on those that want it, because everybody's property value would go up once the sewer line is in place, not just the people that wanted it. But if a sewer system is built and paid for by everyone, including those residents that do not want it, the fact that somebody's property value has probably gone up won't do anything to help their day-to-day cash flow situation. Or talking about it in real terms, in the case of Fry's Road, an increase in your property value isn't going to help you come up with the $130 or so a month that you would need to pay this assessment. So no matter what we do or don't do, there will be significant burdens placed upon someone. That being as such, I think that our petition system strikes the best possible balance of interests. Had this vote gone 7-5 against the project, the vote within the community, I wouldn't have advocated for it. But with the vote being tied 6-6, and with the potential harm that could be done by failed septic systems within a few dozen feet of the Bush River, I think we need to move forward on this. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Perone. Is there any other council conversation? Mr. McMahon?
Just a final comment, if I might. 6-6 tie. 6 of those folks don't know where the money's coming from. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. McMahon. Mr. Vincenti?
Thank you, Mr. President. I thought this is one of those issues where we needed to actually get out, visit the property, and take a look at how it lies in reference to the neighbors, the Bush River, and everything involved. And after being there, after receiving emails from both sides of the issue and speaking to some of the residents, I do believe it is the right thing to do to approve their petition. And even though it may be a burden in the long run, I do believe it is the right thing to do, not only for the environment, but also for the property owners. So I will be supporting it.
Thank you, Mr. Vincenti. Any further comments? Having none, we'll take a roll call vote.
Mr. President?
Aye.
Mr. Perone?
Aye.
Mr. Woods?
Aye.
Mr. McMahon?
Nay.
Mr. Schroeds?
Aye.
Mr. Vincenti?
Aye.
Mr. Beulah?
Aye.
Thank you, council members. Having 6 in the affirmative and 1 in the negative, Resolution 018-17 Fry Road Project Sewer Assessment is approved. Now, gentlemen, in Part B, we have a companion resolution that we need to address because we already passed the fall sewer update and water and sewer update. We will need to put this project into that update, so there's an amendment that will allow us to do that. So we're going to move on Resolution 019-17, Amendment to the Falls Water and Sewer Master Plan 2017 update. Is there a motion?
Mr. President, I move to approve Resolution 019-17.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember McMahon, a second by Councilmember Perone to approve Resolution 019-17, Amendment to Falls Water and Sewer Master Plan 2017 update. Is there any discussion? Having none?
Mr. President?
Aye.
Mr. Perone?
Aye.
Mr. Woods?
Aye.
Mr. McMahon?
Aye.
Mr. Schroeds?
Aye.
Mr. Vincenti?
Aye.
Mr. Beulah?
Aye.
Thank you, council members. Having 7 in the affirmative and 0 in the negative, Resolution 019-17, Amendment to the Falls Water and Sewer Master Plan 2017 update is approved. We're at item number 9, introduction of bills. We have none this evening. Item 10, introduction and consideration of amendments. We have none. You might have seen earlier on your agenda, item for Bill 17-0022, that bill has been removed, so we will not be acting on that this evening. And as such, there will be no opportunity for item number 12, which is in the enrollment of bills this evening.
And Mr. President, if I may, just so it clarifies that the bill in fact was withdrawn, it just wasn't removed from the agenda for the...
Right, it has been withdrawn until whatever iteration it may return in at some time. Thank you. Unfinished business, I have none. New business, none. Business from the president. I think I've said enough already this evening. We'll move on to business from council members. Mr. Perone.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think that the volunteers at Joppa Magnolia Volunteer Fire Company were due an extra special recognition this past weekend. Just about 11 hours after their annual installation of officers and awards banquet ended Saturday night, they were on the scene of a fire that destroyed a single-family home on Avedon Court in Joppatown. In a mere 5 hours after that, they responded to a single-alarm fire at an apartment on Rockwell Street in the Harford Commons complex in Edgewood. The Abingdon and APG fire companies also responded to both fires, along with several other companies to the Avedon Court fire. When the weather gets bad, schools can close, and businesses can close. First responders keep on responding, and their efforts are greatly appreciated. And one final thing, regarding the Avedon Court fire, Larry and Linda from Town Grill and Pub have stepped up once again to lend the community a hand. They are taking up a collection for the individual who was displaced by the Avedon Court fire, who also happens to be the mother of one of their employees. No amount is too small, so if you're able to help out, the Town Grill and Pub is there to collect. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Perone. Mr. Woods.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Perone. And all the public safety workers, I can tell you, appreciate that. New Year's night, I was out fighting a fire and across the line in Baltimore County, and it was probably the coldest I've ever been on the fire. I got up on top of the engine, and my fingerprints stayed on top of the fire truck when I got off. So it was a cold night. But while we're on the public safety realm, I'd like to send a shout out to all of our law enforcement friends and family, and as we recognize National Law Enforcement Appreciation Day. Thank you for everything you do. Also, tomorrow starts the Maryland General Assembly 90-day session, and next week starts the MACO sessions. As the MACO rep, I was reappointed to the MACO Legislative Initiatives Committee. It's where we pick and go over the upcoming bills in draft form and work through that process, vote on them in the mornings before the General Assembly starts up. I was also reappointed to the Taxation Subcommittee, so I'll be representing the county and the council on the tax committee and meeting with the tax and finance committees at the Maryland General Assembly. It's a big committee, and we're pretty much there all week working on issues. So it's going to be a long 90 days. I think you're going to see a lot of interesting things come up in Annapolis. Normally, it's being an election year. Normally, it doesn't happen this way, but I think the rumor is there's going to be a lot of bills that come forward that normally wouldn't this time of year. So I'll keep you posted.
Thank you, Mr. Woods. Mr. McMahon.
Thank you, too, Mr. Perone, for recognizing our first responders and those people that can never say, no, I'm not going on this one. Doesn't work that way. Don and Gary Boyce, I heard your voice. My vote was for you. Thank you.
Mr. Schultz.
Thank you, Council President. First, excellent job tonight. It's been a real pleasure to work with you over the past 3 terms. And I wish you the best in the future. I know you're going to have
Thank you, Mr.
a lot more
Schultz.
time to spend with your family. Just want to congratulate the newest Eagle Scouts from Troop 265. Those are Ryan Morton, Benjamin Nardi, and Michael Yeagle. It was great to be part of their well-earned celebration, and I wish all 3 of them the best in their future endeavors. Lastly, if you would all say a prayer for my dear friend Daryl Comer. He's getting ready to prepare for open heart surgery. He's one of my best buddies out in Narsville, and he means one heck of a lot to our local community out there. So please, before you go to bed tonight, say a prayer for my buddy Daryl. He's loved by a lot of people in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Mr. Vincenti.
Thank you, Mr. President. This past Saturday, I joined Councilman McMahon at St. Matthew's Lutheran Church for the Eagle Scout Court of Honor for 3 young men there, Troop 564, Grayson Saldana, Christian Tabler III, and James Walsh. James Walsh did an archery project up at the Isaac Walton property on Onion Road in Pilesville. And as an archer myself, truly appreciate his project. But more importantly, he also received an appointment to the United States Naval Academy, and he will be a member of the class of 2022. So congratulations to all of them. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Vincenti. Mr. Bueller.
Thank you, Mr. President. No comments from District F tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Do we have anyone signed up for public comment this evening?
Yes, Mr. President, we have 3. John Malamo, followed by Chelsea Roberts.
Good evening. Before I start, I'd like to say to Council President Slutsky and all the members of the council, you understated your accomplishments this evening. Last week I asked for better weather, and today I got it. Next time I'm bringing my list. You can pick and choose what you want, but I'd expect all of them to be granted. John P. Malamo, 2402 Eagle View Drive, Bel Air, Maryland. Now here's the parameters for the landing of an airplane at Harford County Airport. The minimum safe operating altitude is 1,000 feet above ground level. The traffic pattern altitude is 1,000 feet above ground level, as testified to by the airport manager. The approach and landing path slope is 20-to-1, equivalent to an angle of about 3 degrees. The linear distance over ground of that slope is about 20,000 feet. No more of 50% of the commercial operation, including approach and landing path, may be in the Ag District by the Harford County Code. And none of the surrounding properties that are zoned B3 or RR can be included in that commercial operation or the landing or approach paths. And that gives 3 options for the approach and landing paths: straight in, circular rectangular, or spiral down. Now the straight in with the 20-to-1 slope, all in the Ag District, in airspace over land, an area that the airport does not own, computed using a circle with a radius of 20,000 feet, is about 29,000 acres. That would not meet the requirement of 267-88I-2I. The circular rectangular pattern with a 20-to-1 slope requires the same 20,000 feet in airspace and over land the airport does not own, using a rectangle with sides of 2 miles wide, standoff on both sides of the airport, 13,200 feet long, the length of the proposed runway, plus 1 mile at each end. That's 3,379 acres and possibly more, and that does not meet the requirement of the code. Now, in both cases, the airspace over the land involved would be taken from its owners by the county council when they granted the special exception, without due process, and given to the Harford County Airport. Fortunately, the airport chose spiral down, and that traffic pattern is described by a helix. And it's described in an exhibit marked Airport Operations in the application for 5814, the Zoning Board of Appeals case approving the special exception. There's approximately 520 feet on the south end of the runway and approximately 800 feet on the north end of the runway marked approach. No airspace or land area outside the boundaries of the airport property indicated on the Airport Operations exhibit were ever included. Harford County Airport selected that option as reflected in their exhibit. And the exhibit indicates that the total projected land area used in the calculations is 61.02 acres, 37.54 acres, or 62% are in the general industrial area, 23.48 or 38% in the Ag District. Increasing the acreage in the Ag District by more than 14 acres to accommodate the approach and landing paths would exceed the requirements of 88I-2I. That's the situation at the airport, and next time we'll talk about who said what and how they plan to accommodate that.
Thank you, sir. Yes, you can go right to the microphone. Thank you.
Good evening, President Slitsky, council members, and although he's no longer here, County Executive Glassman. My comments tonight are for Mr. Glassman, so I hope he watches this later. Mr. Glassman, my name is Chelsea Roberts, and I am a longtime resident of Harford County and District D. I am on the Whiteford Community Advisory Board for Harford County Government. I am a member here in Harford County with community groups who include Voices for Racial Change and Together We Will Harford. I want to thank you for your State of the County address and for the efforts you and your staff have made in the past year to bring Harford County to, as you say, higher ground. I believe those efforts will benefit Harford County. Thank you. I'm here tonight to say something I am sure you are already well aware of, Mr. Glassman, that the state of our county depends on the state of our schools. Something I hope you are equally aware of is that Harford County Public Schools has a problem with racial bias in our schools throughout the county. We know this because that is what the students are telling us if we listen to them. After the spotlight was shown recently on Bel Air High School from a recent racial incident, public input came pouring in from community members, but also students of Bel Air High Schools and surrounding schools. They summed it up for us that what happened was not only surprising to them, but expected. They expected something like this to happen. That is a problem with Harford County Public Schools. The problem is the responsibility of the Board of Education, the community members, and the county executive's office to fix. All of us have the responsibility right now to keep shining that spotlight on the racial bias we know exists in Harford County Public Schools. Whether the bias is unconscious or not, we, the adults, need to fix it for them, the students. Allocating more funds to Laurie and Amy is the county's responsibility. Reallocating funds from outdated programs into programs that support unconscious bias training and restorative practices is Harford County's responsibility. Right now, the responsibility of the county executive when deciding on the school's budget. No one thing is the cause of this pervasive problem. It will take all of us, the Board of Ed, Harford County Public Schools administrative staff, Harford County citizens, and the county government to fix the problem. Not next term and not next year, but right now before the school budget has been passed. Mr. Glassman, I urge you to take the recommendations from the community, like groups Together We Will, who was here tonight, and Voices in consideration of the school budget. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Our last speaker this evening is Nick Mavlet.
Good evening. And I like that she said about the schools, because I went to school in Harford County. Understandably, there is a budget. There has to be allocated funds. And the thing I didn't see in high school is the teaching of different cultures. I mean, this is something that in college we get, but not in high school. I mean, and it also comes to the districting too, because most of the schools around here, Harford County schools, Simone, Bel Air, Falston, North Harford, are mostly white schools. And that districting needs to change. But if that doesn't change, we need to change how we teach our kids in social studies and in government classes. Because in social studies, we learn about the history written by people that are mostly white. We need to learn other histories that were written by other cultures, Hispanic culture, black culture, different cultures, especially because that may prevent some of these incidents to happen. And if we don't address these issues, then we're just going to have more incidences, and we're going to have more parents angry, more students not liking to live here and wanting to move away because their voices aren't heard in schools they're scared of the kids that may hurt them. And I can speak to that because I've had my issues with kids in my views. I was called an N-word lover in Harford County schools. No one addressed it. No one spoke out, especially from the Board of Ed and the city executive. It is an issue that not just Harford needs to address, but the country needs to address. The disparaging between black and white in this country is noticing, because just now we're getting word out about Baltimore City's heating and cooling issues. This is an issue that it's probably been going on for a long time. We're just paying attention to it now because we have people talking. It's an issue that we should address in our schools too, because not every facility like Joppa, Havre de Grace are up to date. We have to fix the school system so that kids can get educated about different people and not just their culture. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
There is no one else signed up, Mr. President.
Thank you. Having no one else signed up to speak this evening, this meeting is now adjourned.